Okay, that's 10:02 has come and gone, and if everybody is agreeable, we can perhaps make a start on our agenda, and anybody coming in, I'm sure, will catch up without any difficulty. So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along to this full meeting of the Community Partnership. And as Mr. Watson of the Keller Southern Development Trust keeps informing us, one of the better community partnerships operating in Scotland at the moment. And that is due in no small measure to the chairmanship of the police. And I think, first of all, I'd like to pay tribute to Scott MacDonald, for the way he has led us in this last little while. It's been very purposeful and to great effect. And I'm glad to say that he hasn't gone very far in his retirement and is actually now with the Keller Southern Development Trust, and will bring his local expertise and knowledge to bear with us. So thank you very much, Scott, for all you've done, and welcome back to your new role. Apologies, I think Fiona has circulated me with 9, and she herself is doing the prize giving, or attending the prize giving at Gosby High School this morning, so she too is one of the apologies for this morning. Angela Echevarren, Kate Kemmier, Von Ross, Leslie Ann Niven, David Shearer, Hugh Morrison, Fiona Webster, Amanda Wagstaff, and Hedda MacDonald. And the minutes will record this, I'm quite sure. Minutes of the last meeting are circulated. And are there any matters that we wish to pursue that won't be covered at some point in the agenda that we have presented in front of us? I think it's much the same structure as previously. And unless there's any issues that anybody wishes to pick up on at this point, then I'm quite happy to proceed. Anybody wish to pick up anything from the last set of minutes? And we are quite content that they represent a fair record of what happened on the previous at our previous gathering, which was 3rd of March. Okay. Without further ado, then, I think I see Ailsa has come in, and if you're ready to go, Ailsa, item 3 on our agenda is public health, the active Highland strategy, and Ailsa is from the health improvement team, and I'm quite happy to pass the floor to yourself, Ailsa, if you're ready to go.
Yep, you're on mute, Ailsa.
Sorry, not woken up yet. The coffee's not gone in. I'm Ailsa Viegas, and I work for the Health Improvement Team as a Senior Health Improvement Specialist. And I'm here today to talk to you about the physical activity strategy that we've developed in Highland. For the last few years, I've been working on green health, which has been getting people outdoors. And we're still doing that. That's now been integrated into NHS Highland. But I'm also involved with the physical activity strategy work, which is Active Highland is a subgroup of the Community Planning Partnership. So as a member of that group, they've asked me to come along and chat to you about our plans for the Active Highland strategy and hopefully get your views. So if it's okay, I'll just quickly share my screen. Go to the slides. Hopefully you can see this okay. And sorry, that little boy's a little bit out of whack. I'm working on a MacBook today and it's changed the formatting a bit. So an active Highland strategy group has been established, and it's made up of various Highland community planning partnerships. We've got the NHS, we've got High Life Highland, Sports Scotland, as well as representations from education and transport on there as well. We've been meeting for the last few months, and the aim is to have in place a framework that encompasses getting people active through movement, play, physical activity and sport in Highland, with a full commitment from all key partners and reporting to the Highland Community Planning Partnership Board. Over the last 6 months, we've pulled together a set of outcomes and emerging priorities to encourage people to live active lives in Highland and link closely to the Active Scotland framework We have done a sort of desk-based consultation on this, and now is the start of just having some face-to-face chats with everyone over what we've come up with. It's a systems-based approach, and this is kind of following what the Active Scotland framework is looking at, but basically we're looking at all aspects of healthy living across Highland. So active health and social care, sport and active recreation, active places of learning, active workplaces, active places and spaces, active travel, and communication and public education. Within these different sections, we've looked at what services are available, what issues are affecting those services, what policies cover these, and what networks exist and what organisations are responsible from them. We've done a fair bit of community engagement, and the aim was to shape the delivery of the Active Highland framework, including the development of a set of priorities for all partners to take forward that will contribute to achieving the Active Highland outcomes. And the purpose of this community engagement was to firstly raise awareness of the strategy with the stakeholders, identify and agree the priorities for action, inform decision making to support priorities, and develop ways of working to implement the strategy. So from that engagement, we've come up with our Highland outcomes. There's 6 outcomes in total. And in the middle there, we've got our commitment to equality directs everything that we do. So the 6 outcomes are, firstly, we encourage and enable inactive people to move more. Then we will partner with people to develop physical, mental and social confidence and competence and personal well-being from the earliest age and throughout life course. We encourage and enable active people to stay active throughout life. We value, maintain and improve our active infrastructure, people and places, including the natural environment and active travel. We support resilient and well-being in community schools, workplaces, health and social care settings through physical activity, play and sport. And we improve opportunities to participate, progress and achieve in the sport, play and other physical activities. So we're really asking today, do you agree with these outcomes? And in particular for this group, are there particular outcomes in there that you feel relate to your work most? And I'll come back to that at the end when we have our discussion, so I'll show the slide again. We also have emerging priority areas that have come out through the consultation. And we'd be quite interested to know, have we captured the right ones? Are there ones that you think are more important than the other, or are there some priority areas that are missing? So these cover a sort of a wide spectrum of ways in which people can be active, from green health, nature and the outdoors, learning and development, targeting at priority groups who find it most difficult to lead active lives, improve accessibility to opportunities to be physically active, active travel, children and young people, place and settings, communications, and link with climate and sustainability agenda goals. So as part of the consultation, really we're just asking the questions, do you agree with the emerging priorities? What could you or your group organisation contribute to these emerging priorities? And are there any additional priorities that you think would be important to include? So what I'll do is I'll go back to the previous slides so they can see, because they're quite wordy and it's hard to discuss them if we can't actually view them. So we'll start with the outcomes, and I'd be really interested to know from the group, do these make sense to you? And is there any particular outcomes that would be of a key focus for this group?
Thank you very much, Ailsa. That was very interesting and very good to know this is happening. And I am, as first look, I'm quite content with the items you've identified there, the main themes and thrusts of the matter you've identified. If I can pick up on the achieving sport, play and other physical activities has been something I'm involved in, because I chair the Southern Sports Council. I think we must be one of the few sports councils that still persists and survives in the Highland Council structure. although we're no longer in the Highland Council structure because they've cancelled our funding and we no longer have any direct support coming in. And really, that's one of the difficulties I'm facing at the moment, is to try and keep this organisation surviving with no direct support coming in from the local authority. So just if I could bring your attention just to the financial aspects of things. Do you have a budget for this work? And really, how can I possibly tap into it to try and provide some basic funding to keep my sports council thriving?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, at the moment, at present, there's not any dedicated funds to support the development of the strategy.
Okay.
But it might be, as feedback continues, that that's something we have to source as a community planning partnership to support the work. So sorry, there's not a pot of money that goes alongside this one.
Oh, that's okay. That's a good answer. I can accept that, and it just means I have to go try to pick other pockets along the way. Financially, the Sports Council is solvent, it's comfortable, and we can actually move forward. But the lack of core funding just means that things like administration will be a bit of a stress that I could actually do without. However, that's my problem, and I'm sure other people have things to say. So, anybody else wish to come in at this point and pick up? I'm looking for hands from any place at all. Oh, Richard.
Yes, thanks, Jim, and thanks for that presentation. I think I'm going to go on a little bit about what Jim was saying about funding to do these things. I mean, this is a great idea, and I fully endorse the principle behind it. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the funding and the resources to deliver it, then it's just an idea, and it's quite disheartening that obviously an awful lot of work's gone into the production of this, and a lot of thought into the outcomes that we all would, I think we would all agree are vital, given where we are at the moment. But to not have the funding is where do we go from here? How do we actually get this delivered? Because it's something I think we would all support, but and without the funding, how do we deliver it? And I'm happy to work with anybody to try and see how we can get the funding for it, because I can really see the value in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, I'm taking notes, so I'm certainly going to feed this back to the group. So thank you.
It's a very necessary initiative. I feel looking around the current young age group who've come through COVID, it's quite difficult. Like my own grandchildren are there, to try and actually get them out into the outdoors and doing things of a physical nature. Some more than others. Perhaps it's a genetic want on my side of the family, but it's just something where I think they could be doing more. Christine? Are you on mute? Christine?
Anyway, thanks, Ailsa. I wondered if it's worth having a conversation with the Forestry Commission, because Forestry Commission Scotland have several funding streams available, obviously for outdoor activities, and it might be worth having a conversation with them. And on the past, in a previous sort of job I had working with perhaps a different area, I engaged conversation with them and managed to secure obviously funding on several occasions for all sorts of outdoor activities. So actually might be worth having a conversation with them.
Thank you, Christine. And actually the Active Highland Partnership is chaired by Cathy Steer, who also chairs the Highland Green Health Partnership. And they've agreed to continue, and Forestry Land Scotland sit on that partnership. So we can certainly take this as a discussion point to that next partnership to see if there's anything they could bring to this to help support it. So thanks for that suggestion.
Okay, thanks.
Any other points coming in? Anybody else wishes to come in with a comment or question? Sorry, Elsa, carry on.
Sorry, I was going to move to the priorities if I can't see you all, but in case that sort of triggered any conversation points amongst people. So these are the current priorities. We may have missed some, and it'd be really interesting to know in terms of the Sutherland Community Planning Partnership, which are the most important to you at this present time?
Well, it's catching me a bit cold, I must admit. It's something perhaps we need to, the presentation will be forwarded as part of the
Yes.
report on the meeting. So perhaps it's something that we can actually look at individually, unless there's any immediate points coming forward, and come back with our own responses. It looks a very reasonable set of priorities. And it's just a matter of just taking time to digest and come back. David, do you want to come in?
I just did bore people again with me going on about the same two things, but to me, the biggest threats to the rural communities of the Highlands at the moment are climate change and depopulation. So, we need to be able to target results that allow younger people to live and work in the area. And it's not just about children and young people themselves, because we engage with them a lot. It's their parents. We have to understand better what allows parents to continue to live and work in rural areas and not have to move away to other areas. And to me, those are the two biggest threats that we're facing. And if we can, the other things, place settings plays into that. Communications plays into the part. These are all really strong things, and well-being through green health and nature. But everything should be really targeted at actions that affect how the rural communities and the remote rural communities of the Highlands are dealing with depopulation and climate change, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair point. It's just as you're saying that, it just crossed my mind. It's hard to promote team sports if you don't have enough people to form a team. And that's the depopulation aspect. I saw a question in a chat about active travel. Do anybody wish to follow up on that?
I'll need to come out of my share screen so I can see the chat. Sorry. Hold on. Mm-hmm. So there should be an outcome, good question, right? So active travel's in the priorities. Which one supports active travel? So things like we encourage, enable and active people to move more. That'll be things like everyday journeys and getting people to take the bike and walk or park and walk and stuff like that. And again, encouraging and enable active people to stay active throughout life. There'll be aspects around the use of e-bikes in there, is keeping people active longer. But we could maybe pull it out to be more clearer in the outcomes. Definitely, we've got sustainable travel officer for Highland Council sitting on the active travel strategy. So when we did all this systems mapping here in this big one, you can't see it, I'm not sharing it at the moment, but certainly themes of active travel were coming out of that. So I'll take that on board and maybe make them more visible within the outcomes. Thank you.
Any further questions for Ailsa? Any further points? Okay, and I'm pleased to say thank you, Ailsa, for answering the questions from Jane. And it's, well, we can't leave this without having a next step. So what do you suggest that we take on board, or how can we contribute into a future development of this?
So the next step, well, I'll share the slides today, and I'd certainly welcome any feedback from people once you've had time to digest them. In terms of timescales for finalising the strategy, we're looking towards the autumn time. So we're really going to take our time to get this completely right. And at the moment, we're in the sort of first phase, the sort of community engagement phase. There'll be a second phase around the implementation and looking at what the actions we might take forward. We'll be coming back to the community planning partnerships at that time. And I take on board the feedback today about funding and how we might resource that when we do it. So it's not moving terribly fast, but expect sort of towards the end of the year to hear further back from us on the implementation phase.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I would just simply encourage community partnership members to respond to the presentation that you have shown us and with their own thoughts on the matter, and help to contribute to the overall purpose of the initiative. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much in that case. And we can move on now to item 4, public health. I think Ian Douglas is present, as I see Michael Robb. Southern profile demographics, and I think we're well now aware of the population dynamics of Sutherland and the skewed demographic profile and the depopulation issues. And that last NHS report was an absolutely sobering document, which has just stopped us all in our tracks and made us think as to just what we can do to sort things out. So, Ian, if it's yourself, please feel free to take the floor.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for this opportunity to come along and talk to you, albeit fairly briefly, about our what is our partnership profiles project. I'm going to share a slide set. Just like to also introduce myself. I'm Ian Douglas. Obviously, I'm a senior health intelligence specialist working for public health. What does that mean? What does that mean, indeed? So the team focuses on supporting the key cogs of public health around health protection, health improvement, and also public health service planning. And what skills do we have? Well, we major in epidemiology and understanding population health. And we also have functions relating to evidence, so gathering evidence about the effectiveness of programs. We also have functions around evaluation of those programs. So that's why that's my background and my team's background. Mike's with me today, and Mike will take a note if anything comes up in the chat. If you just bear with me, I'll just share my screen, and hopefully things will go smoothly from there. So a short presentation. I understand I have 10 minutes. If this doesn't come up, please let me know, because this is the scary bit when things go blind for me.
Looks okay now.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. So we all know where we are. So I'm just taking this 10 minutes really not to focus on in depth on any of your anything from the profiles. I just want to flag what's in the profile. So what's our offer here to you get to the community partnerships. And so we've been working on these profiles projects. We've got profiles developed for 9 community partnerships in the Highland Local Authority area and 4 community planning groups in Argyll and Bute. The profiles have a thematic organisation. All of these documents are now available on the NHS Highland Internet, so that they're entirely accessible by the public and the wider community. They're not internal documents in any shape or form. So we'll just move on. So this is what we've delivered today on in terms of the profiles. We've developed profiles on demography and deprivation. We've also produced, published at the end of April on adult health and wellbeing. So I suspect it's possibly the report 1 of the sequence of documents that you may have seen already. We have advanced planning for publication on children and young people's health and wellbeing profiles in autumn, and also a dedicated report on health inequalities in the pipeline. So, well, you know, inevitably you're putting documents out into the external sphere, but some thought has gone into these, what we think they're for anyway. I'm not going to read through all of these little bullet points, but I think that bottom right one is really important for me, because we're putting out a body of evidence around population health and well-being, but it's only there to complement that community knowledge and professional judgment that sits with groups like yourselves. But hopefully it provides the documents provide a consistent form and presentation of that evidence that allows all the community partnerships in Highland and Argyll and Bute to have access to similar data in a similar format. So it's just as a reminder, if you're flicking through the profiles or looking at the profiles, that there are key links on all the data selected and chosen to reflect across those public health priorities, the national public health priorities, and obviously priority 1 is right up there on your own agenda. I'm just going to flag the area that we're talking about a little bit. So obviously you will recognise Sutherland either as a as a geographic unit, you'll have a mental image of what that involves. The area flagged on the screen is the area that we're talking about within these profile, within your particular area profile. I mean, obviously covers a huge geographical area, you know, some of the very most remote and fragile communities in Scotland, as well as that more developed, more populous area in the southeast area of Sutherland. So we rely on the data for these profiles to allow comparison with Scotland, Highland, and other community partnerships. We need to define geographies, and we're also dependent for some of that data in the on the areas that the data is published at. The profiles provide details at smaller area level for areas within Sutherland, but there are limitations to what can be published, obviously, because of the numbers of events that might be involved in particular indicators. But generally throughout the profile, the area details are available for 3 blocks of areas within Sutherland. This is Sutherland East, Sutherland South, Sutherland North and West. I'd be absolutely clear on this. We didn't develop those names. Those are national namings. These are a geography called intermediate geographies. Sutherland East has a population of just over 6,000, I think. Sutherland South about 4,000, and the Northwest area population of just over 3,000. There's a slight maybe misalignment there with East Ross around the Editon area. Probably a misalignment on a sort of notional council boundaries of where areas divide of probably about 500 people. I'll just move on quickly. So first set of profiles, this is the sort of things which are covered. So current population sizes, there's always been reference to depopulation already in this meeting, so that sort of thing's covered. Urban rural status of areas, population increases and changes, and also importantly for me, for age structures. I think it was David who mentioned his 2 critical threats, one being depopulation. I would add the aging structure of your population to that picture very much. There's also an overview of deprivation in these areas. Inevitably, there's gaps in our data. We don't have good data on ethnicity, religion, language, and also household data at the moment. Some of those will be filled in with the publication of census data in the near future, and that's something we'll look back to incorporate into these profiles again. Maybe the profile, you possibly haven't seen this set of profiles. These are the newer ones published in April. So again, detail at the Sutherland level for community partnerships all across Highland, and small area data where it's available and appropriate to be published. So we've got data in there, your changing life expectancy and mortality pictures, health inequalities is majored on to a degree. So we're supporting indicators with indications of where there are primarily geographic inequalities in health. We've got some information on long-term conditions, so changing patterns of diseases. We've got information on harm and alcohol and drug use, and you can read the list. So a gathering of information focused on adult health. Obviously, we're going to develop these children's profiles separately. It's a volume of data thing for us as well, and what's manageable in a profile rather than sticking it all together into one thing. So I have got, I'm aware of my time. I've got a very short, very high level summary of some of the issues that or interesting things coming out of your profile. So you mentioned population change. This is historic population change and the changing in very broad age groups within your within the Sutherland Community Partnership area. So reflecting long-term trends in birth rates, we see a reduction in children over time. Also, this very large increase people over 65, and a slight reduction in the age of those 16 to 64. So, you know, that has lots of consequences, particularly for driving need for services for older people. And we'll go on briefly to touch on that in the next slide. But there's also this change in the balance between young and old, and with implications for workforce. So again, these are just drawn out at not entirely at random, but these are the type of graphical content you'll find in the report, supported by tables. So again, this is flagging your older age structure. This is projected population, so how things may change in the future, given current trends in births, deaths, and migration. and we can see that hope you maybe can see briefly that Sutherland will continue to have this older age structure, so proportionally more people at older ages than the Highland Council area as a whole. Already touched on this briefly, but clearly coming out of this, the Highland profiles is this increase in the older. So we're going to see further increases in frailty, dementia, and multimorbidity. So that's people living with multiple conditions as we move forward in time. Sutherland tends to have that older population, so as a proportion of its population, we'll have more people living with these types of conditions in the community. I want to finish on one of the more sobering slides in this report, and this is the adverse trends in life expectancy. That these are national patterns as well as patterns we're seeing in Highland and within Sutherland. This graphic shows male life expectancy patterns are similar for female life expectancy. So what we've seen, and this is pre-pandemic trends we're looking at here, which is this slowing and non-increase in life expectancy, which is extremely worrying as a sentinel measure of population health, and it's a life expectancy, a touchstone measure for societal progress almost, and we're seeing in Highland that line flattening. That's common in Scotland, and as you can see in Sutherland, that line has flattened as well. Lots of explanations potentially for that. The changes occur in about 2012, from 2012 onwards, which is ties in with many changes in the fabric of way that we as a society we supported people, going from retrenchment and government spending, from the financial crises. So very difficult picture. One of the things which is not drawn out clearly in this graphic is that those trends don't affect everybody equally, and there is definitely good evidence at Highland and certainly at a national level that those adverse trends impact on some of the most deprived people in our societies. So not shared, not a thing shared equally. So please, this is an advert. Please use the profiles, have a look at them. That's what we'd like. You'd like you to engage with the profiles. We believe they can be building bricks to help lead discussions and form engagement with communities. And as I say, brought together that information around professional judgment and your local knowledge can be a powerful tool. Very good for comparing similarities and differences. So in many ways, it's important to understand not just if there are differences, but also if you're the same as other areas, and the profiles certainly allow you to look at that. Most of the graphics I've shown there cover numbers and rates, or a measure like life expectancy. It doesn't really have a scale. So it's important to understand the absolute size of the issues. So numbers are in there. So the numbers of people with certain conditions, hospitalised or whatever, it's important to understand that as well as look at patterns and rates. Something here about identifying the geography and communities. It is just important that we know our patch, so we can refer to that mapping, and that's where your specialist knowledge comes in as well. Something about pitching this in the policy context when you're using them. Just a practical thing that most of the graphics can be just taken as screenshots out of these reports. If you want to reuse in presentations, please do. If you really need high quality images, if you'd like a high quality image to use in a report or a presentation or a poster or whatever you're doing, please contact us and we'll try to make those available to you in good time and order. We just need a wee bit of notice on that. So I'm gonna close out now. Please share with your networks. That's what I would ask. The documents are in the public domain. That'd be great if you could. Some things that I'd like you guys to think about. There's many ways of publishing things these days. We've stuck with a PDF type format, so a document type format, because that's what we believe people still love and use, particularly at community levels. People are not so keen on going to dashboards and trying to produce data out of themselves unless they have time and skills. So our document's still the right format. We can produce these in other formats potentially. Also have a look at the content. Is there too much? Is there too little? We've got something about update frequency. One of my colleagues sitting in this meeting today is a specialist in the type of software that allows us to update these more frequently than was possible in the past when we've produced profiles. If anybody wants to be involved in the future set of profiles that we've planned around the children's profiles, please let us know. We can offer opportunities to be involved. And that would be really good if to identify other indicators that you might feel useful. Even if we can't source those, I think it's really important that we note those down and try to understand how we could improve the data collection on those. The data in these profiles wants to offer a comparative picture, so what that does preclude things like one-off surveys, and also if we don't have Highland coverage, if it's a very local survey, then that's problematic. So, but if we have missed any data sources, please let us know. I would also like to know how you've used, if you do go on to use this, how have you used, because it justifies us doing these and investing team time in these type of resources. You know, time's precious. We believe that these are useful. Hopefully you'll find them useful. Please, if you have any questions, contact myself or the team. The generic email address for the team is embedded in all the documents. So that's a quick flag of what's there. If you would like, we could, if you feel it would be useful, we can come back and talk in more depth about the data in there. If you'd like to do that, or one of your subgroups feel they require that, that could possibly be arranged. Just again, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to me about these products. I hope you do find them useful. I'll close out now by escaping my screen. If anybody's put anything in the chat, I have no idea. So thank you very much for your time this morning. That's me.
Okay, Doc, thank you, Ian. I haven't seen anything come into chat, but that may change in the next few minutes. These are very informative reports, very sobering, and also I'm very grateful to Margaret for drawing our attention to these and thus allowing us to have you here today to deliver your information. As we well, I'll throw it open in a minute, but just a comment. Looking at the demographic profile, an aging demographic group brings a certain measure of wealth to our economy. But a counterpoint is that they don't tend to breed, and also they tend to bring with them or retain aging attitudes. And these are kind of things which we have to take on board as we look to find our way forward into something more purposeful in our local economy. These are excellent reports, excellent information. As regards format, I'm quite happy with PDF personally, but to get access to the underlying Word documents at some point, perhaps to pick and choose bits and pieces from them would be very helpful. But that may not be too easy to arrange. Any questions for Ian at this point? Anyone want to come in? Richard?
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Ian, for that presentation. It was really useful. I mean, to me, it hammers home the problem that we're facing here with depopulation and the ever-growing aging population in Sutherland. And some of the graphs are quite sobering to see them. I'd really welcome, if I could possibly get a copy of the slides, it would be useful. I think from what I'm doing with the transport side of things, I think it's really useful to be able to show this and when we're applying for funding to drive the transport initiative forward, and for that matter, the housing and everything else that we're trying to do. But I'm focused on housing and transport at the moment. But if we can get a copy of the slides, I think it'd be useful. I mean, it's great having all that information, but I'm not really seeing any answers, and that's my concern as much as anything else. But having the data helps us to understand the situation, and then from that, perhaps we'll find some of the answers for ourselves. Thanks, Ian.
Exactly, that's the way I see it too, Richard. We have a lot of information coming at us, and this information will have applications throughout our subgroup structure. All subgroups will be able to pick something from this. So we just have to it's work in progress. David?
Yeah, I actually find it really quite depressing when you see those statistics, because we have to radically change what we're doing, and what we have to really if we want to change the demographics and repopulate, we don't actually still have to be planning for the people that are here. We have to be starting place planning for the people who aren't here yet. And that's the thing. So we cannot go with demand led and just on the information of the people who are in Sutherland. We have to go beyond that and look at what we want if we want our communities to survive. And that's why we have to be ambitious with what we want to do. You know, the aging demographic is really scary. Jim, you touched on it there. If you ask people from, you know, in their 70s, what their priorities are, it's very unlikely to be childcare or schools or employment, because that's not, you know, and actually a lot of people, and I don't blame them for this, like the fact that Sutherland is a quiet place. Sutherland being quiet to me is Sutherland dying. Sutherland needs to be noisier, it needs to be busier, it needs to have more things going on in it. And the quieter we are, the more threatening that noise, that lack of noise is. And I think we need to noise things up a wee bit. And these statistics, I think, should be the rallying call for us all to realise we can't just go on doing what we've been doing, or it's going to get beyond the point of no return.
Couldn't agree more. And just from an anecdotal element from my own experience, the 2013 Dornoch Master Plan had an element looking at an inward migration. We've actually had our inward migration, and we now have to look in this corner certainly at retention of our young people and bringing back those who have had to go away and who may want to return. So those are the two elements that are exercising my mind at the moment. Phil?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I had a quick look at the while you were speaking there, Ian, just a quick look at the report and went back to the age profile. I mean, I accept what everyone's saying, but I'm actually reasonably a little bit reassured that there seems to be a bulge that's going through and the promise of a sustainable, albeit reduced population, because below that bulge, it does seem to be fairly consistent. I know that we do need to grow the population. I don't disagree with the points that have already been made, but I just wondered whether that was a correct interpretation of the data that's been presented, or whether I'm missing something.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's this older cohorts at older ages are aging, Phil, and those reflect, you know, past birth trends primarily, and also a little bit of mortality trends, like good survival, if you like, and that should be celebrated. And that those cohorts will age through, but you've got another 20 years of that aging to come, and someone's sorry talk quite eloquently about, you know, the needs of people over 70 and balancing those against, you know, the younger people, and clearly that is an issue that, you know, that with a reduced workforce population, I mean, how do you supply services to that aging population will be a theme which will run for another 20 years in your communities whilst that bulge works through. After that, you know, who knows, you may have a smaller, more balanced population in terms of its age structure. But at the moment we're dealing with the problems in the here and now. I feel, as well as trying to plan for the future, and at the moment those whilst we touch one of the tricks is, you know, is how do we do all this? How do we do all this? And particularly in remote rural areas where there's limitations in terms of economies of scale for doing things often. So providing services at arm's length, and very difficult. So it's a hugely challenging agenda. We just hope that some of the evidence in this type of document allows you, as you've already mentioned, make a better case, make a stronger case for Sutherland. I would say that we also did 8 other profiles for Highland. You know, that each of those communities will have, you know, they have shared issues in many of those other communities, and I think that's where you also have to look about your common themes with common other areas, because there's something about one voice on some of these topics. yeah, hugely tricky, hugely sobering for my mind. What's not new is that population aging picture. You know, that's Phil, that's been, you know, we've been experiencing that for the last 10, 15, 20 years. This isn't an explosion. This is an incremental thing to my mind. So whether we've responded to those challenges to date in an effective way is questionable, I think. So we do need new thinking. Very, very difficult problems, though. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. I think Phil raises a very fair point, but I would only comment that I find in my experience it's an age cohort which is very successful at recruitment. So there's not just a flow of population from the younger age groups onwards, there's an inflow of population way up the tree, as it were, and it's a recruitment of a similar age group coming into the area, which I think will maintain the structure for some years to come. Any more questions or points for Ian? I don't see any hands up, so thank you very much, Ian. Do you need any response from us in the near future, or are you just quite content that we have the information and we can use it as we best can?
Absolutely, please do, but please let us know if you've used it or it's been useful.
Yeah.
And I've taken on board your point about the Word document. That's not problematic. If you contact us, I think we can facilitate that for you, James. That's not a problem. No, I mean, just that feedback's good in this, and you know, help us shape the next lot of profiles if you so wish. That's really. I just looked. Is this an advert today to make you aware of material being available? So feel we've achieved that. So thank you for the opportunity again.
That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And please feel free to stick around or go as you wish. I'm sure you have other things to take your attention. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Okay, Doc. Item 5, subgroup updates. And these have been circulated, I think, by Fiona. And I start off with fuel poverty, which sits with me. And can we take my general report as read? And hopefully I kind of captured where we are at the moment. Much of it is work in progress as the world changes around us. And I think the main thing we're looking at is having recruited the assistance of Professor David Bell to aid our thoughts on the matter and to make representation to his contacts in Scottish Government. And I think it's just something that we just have to look at and just see where we go as we progress. We just have to see where the summer takes us and where what the autumn gives us and where we finish up within the winter again. It's just a season to season existence at the moment. Anything I can answer at the moment? The only thing I would add is the Change Works report was excellent, and it just simply consolidated with facts and figures and statistics what we already have know in our gut reaction to what we see around us at the moment. Okay, if there's nothing else, I can move on to the food poverty, which again sits with me, and the report has been put round as best as I can remember things. The only new issue that has appeared, and it appeared about this time last year and then faded with the Trussell Trust initiative around Cash First. And the Cash First report has come out, and I've only had a chance to scan through it so far, so I need to read it very carefully. But it seems to be full of words, as most reports are, but I'm struggling in a first look to find where the money is. Where the actual cash is, and that would be very disappointing if so much effort for a year now has gone into actually producing this report to actually put food larders and food banks into the past and look at a cash system to advance payments to keep people in difficulties going. And I'm just not seeing the cash at first glance, but it's maybe hidden away, and I really need to read the thing closely to see where we're going to see how we can address it, how we respond to it. Anybody else had a chance to look at it? Not yet. It appeared in conjunction with the Trussell Trust about this time last year, and I pursued it with Trussell Trust. I was assured that a kind of a conclusive report would be would be issued in due course, and it's here with us. And it's how we actually use it, I think, is the next issue. Another issue I think we have is with Westminster funding, which the balance of 50,000 now sits with KOSDT rather, and we'll have to just I think is to look after the under 25 age group more than we've been doing. David?
I mean, obviously, there's been some correspondence this morning on that, Jim. The Westminster Foundation have been very good in making funding available to Sutherland. Their processes are a little bit interesting to work with. So we had, prior to Christmas, distributed funding in a kind of cash for kids style to family, and our staff worked really hard getting food vouchers out before Christmas. That was part of the overall funding. But when they reviewed the entirety of it, they felt that the food larder support wasn't meeting their target audience of under 25s, and given the statistics that we've just had from Ian, that's understandable. Most of our food larder clients are well over 25, so I can understand that. But as a result, their board of trustees decided that they didn't want to continue with distributing money to food larders in the way that they had previously. So they've asked us to look at a way of still helping food larders, but in a way that targets more under 25. So whether that's buying specific goods that the food larders can use that are more likely to be used by children and families, or whether it's food vouchers for local shops that are targeted at local families, we still have to work out. But what we'll do is we will use one of the next meetings of the food poverty subgroup to talk that through, to try and find a solution to make sure that all our food larders can benefit from the Westminster funding, but in a way that the Westminster Foundation finds more palatable to their needs. So it's not it's a moving feast, if you pardon the pun. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up that that has just been finalised yesterday, and I made you aware of it just a wee while ago as well, Jim, is we've been working with our Guy Game and the Country Food Trust about the Country Food Trust process venison and other game into meals that can be used for to help people to support them in poverty. And in the next few weeks, we're going to get a few thousand packets of venison bolognese delivered to us that are they don't have to be refrigerated, and they have a shelf life of 12 months. There is way too many to be used purely by QASTT. We knew that in the first instance, and we were always speaking to the Country Food Trust about distributing this wider across Sutherland through the food group, but it's only once I get the logistics of what all these thousands of packets mean and how we distribute them and all that. So we should be receiving them next week, and then we'll hopefully be distributing them across Sutherland to all the food larders. But you know, packets of venison bolognese for free, even though they're dear.
I was just wondering where we got to with I didn't quite get the full depth of the last email you sent, David, but I'm all for venison bolognese, free or not. So that's an excellent thought. And I think the next agenda for the food group is starting to fill up quite well at the moment. There was another point that kind of did flicker across my mind there, but at the moment it's just gone. We can come back to it later. I'm quite sure if it's important. Anything else on the food aspect that I can pursue at the moment? Okay, Doc. Transport, Richard.
Thanks, Jim. First of all, my apologies because I haven't submitted a written report. There's been quite a lot going on in terms of the transport side of things. I've been working with David and Scott and Fiona. I've also had a meeting with David Bell, who has been really helpful and given me some really good insights on things. As you said, Jim, he's already working with you guys for food and poverty, food and fuel, but he's looking at communications, and he's working with the Scottish Government on that. AECOM have been commissioned by Scottish Government to deliver a communications paper on in rural areas, and the part of that is mainly digital communications, but transport is also a heavy feature on it. So David Bell has agreed to speak to the Scottish ministers about the transport aspect in the rural Highlands. What we want to do is not to duplicate things that are being done by other groups. We're very conscious that the 2045, North by 2045 are working on transport, as is Focus North. So we don't want to be duplicating what they're doing. So it's very important that we work with these guys to make sure that we have an integrated transport plan across Sutherland that works in conjunction. And I believe that Marianne also has contact with people in Condon who are also working on that Highland transport plan for their area. So it'd be useful for us to learn anything that can be learned from existing ones as well. So it's all looking quite positive at the moment. There's going to be a Teams meeting pulled together for stakeholders across Sutherland. Teams mainly because it's going to be allow everybody to get a chance to come into it, but then we're going to go out and around about and speak to people about it as well. And hopefully we'll get the consultation side of things will be completed by the early autumn, and then we can get hopefully, fingers crossed, a time for some funding to get a project manager in place to build and integrate a transport plan for Sutherland, and then post March next year start putting that plan together and forming a community interest company that as a working body for that. So a lot of good things happening, but it's like everything else, it's all very slow. I'd love to see it being done last year, the year before, or 10 years ago, but we are where we are, and I think because we're taking the initiative, I think things will be achieved, and I'm confident that the team we've got with David, Scott, and Fiona that we'll really achieve some good things. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. It's a very positive and very necessary initiative, and very ambitious in its own way too. So I think it's we've already had a good start, because I noticed that the summary of transport structures in Sutherland at the moment, as prepared by Fiona and Scott, I put it in front of Edinburgh Community Council when it first appeared, just to get, and it was well received as an initial summary of where things are. And when I just touched on Edgerton, I remember the point I've made. I failed to make under food poverty in this. Edgerton have suspended their food larder for the next 2 months, and just a lack, perhaps not quite lack of demand, but a very specific demand, which they wish to kind of see if how leaving things alone for a couple of months would actually affect it. Any questions for Richard on as regards the transport matter? I was just congratulate Richard for taking this on board and running with it. It's an excellent thing to pursue. Whenever I go, whenever meetings I attend, these issues come up: jobs, housing, transport, and of course childcare. The issues that we kind of constantly face across this county. Any questions for Richard? Okay, doke. Moving on to employability. Heather can't be here, but Scott, I think you have a summary.
Yeah, so Heather's submitted a short update, so I'll just read that for the purpose of the meeting. So the last meeting of the employability was on the 25th of April, where there was 5 attendees. At the meeting, they heard from Fiona Webster from Highland Council, who shared the latest figures for the Scottish Childminding Recruitment Incentive. So they've had over 20 inquiries in North Highland, with just a handful from East and Central Sutherland. It hasn't said exactly the number for our area. All those that have made inquiries will be followed up. Discussions held re how to get the information regarding the incentive out to more people. So that's obviously really important. And they're looking at CALA and toddler groups have been suggested for that. Also discussions around upcoming Sutherland Jobs Fair. This is to be held in Golspie, the new YMCA refurbishment on Saturday the 24th of June, and that's from 10 AM to 2 PM. And then further to that, she'd give an update regarding that Gail Prince would be leaving HIE for Pastures New, still within Highland, and she's looked for the opportunity to wish Gail well and to thank her for all the support that she's given to that group in particular. And then the next meeting of the employability is due to be on Tuesday, the 1st of August at 2 PM. And that's it, Jim.
Okay, doc, thanks, Scott. And thanks to Heather for her report. I'm not quite sure we can follow up with any questions, because that would have to be set to Heather specifically. Next on the go, we have Homes for People and Infrastructure, which is Marianne. Just before we start, Marianne, can I just say I enjoyed your report, and something leapt out at me. And there's the phrase "planning process streamlined," and I wish to quote a phrase from a well-known local council officer who pointed out that the police work within very, very strict legal constraints, and yet have a policy of policing by consent. Planning has also strict legal constraints. It'd be nice if you could work with planning with consent, planning by consent as well. But I think that may be some time away. So please, sorry for interrupting you. Please carry on. The floor is yours.
No, not at all. Thank you for that. Most of what I would say is in the update, but I feel we've got quite a lot of momentum in the Homes and Infrastructure group at the moment. We're looking forward to our learning visit next week, but also very grateful to David and to Ewan of Asset Development Trust for taking Sutherland Homes and Infrastructure, that element, to Holyrood. They've been spreading, you know, our message to do with repopulation, and it's been heard, and I think we need to go with that. We've had a lot of cross-party agreement and support for what we've all been talking about in the reports we've heard this morning as well. So really keen to move on with bringing some of these decision makers and funders up to Sutherland, show them what we're doing, show them our potential, and take a completely fresh look at how we're going to go about this. And as David said earlier, planning for what's to come instead of just reacting to what's here at the moment. So looking forward to the next stages with the group, and I really value the other people in this group because there's a huge amount of knowledge, far more than I have, but I think we're all working in the same direction. So happy to take any questions, and you can also question anybody else in the group because they may have the answers.
Working very purposely, I would say, Marianne. It's an excellent work being done there. I've actually passed myself on the learning trip because it would actually depress me completely, because I'm still scarred from my episode with the Scottish Government in 2010, and so I would be miserable company on the way around for anybody that was on the minibus. So I apologise for passing. I'm sure I'll get a full report on what's happening anyway, and I work very closely with Ronnie too. David?
We'll get you on the next one, Jim. We'll get you on the next one.
Okay, no.
Just as Marianne said there, myself and Ewan, through various different channels, have made contact with Paul McLennan, who's the Housing Minister, and he's very, very keen to come to Sutherland and speak to us. And I think he's definitely going to be meeting with folk in Asset and with ourselves at Kyle Sutherland Development Trust. But clearly, because of our role and Marianne's role, that'll be wider and expanded to look at the Sutherland plan completely. So I think that's a really good start, getting the Housing Minister to take a real interest in Sutherland, and I think we have to link that in with the other things that we're talking about here. So it's not just about housing, it's about homes as well as childcare, as well as employment, as well as transport. And I think once we get that, unfortunately I did have a meeting 2 weeks ago with the Transport Minister, but he subsequently resigned. I hope it was nothing to do with me, but so I don't have that contact anymore, so we'll have to wait and see who replaces him.
Okay, Doc, thanks, David. And it's absolutely fantastic that you get a Scottish Minister on site to have a look around the back country. Yeah. If I can just deviate a little bit, I can remember a story my father told me in his working days when he took the then Tory MP for First Caithness in Sutherland, when they had Tory MPs in such times, around the north and west, and he was asked by this MP what to do with this land, and he replied immediately, "Give it to the people." And he was subsequently named and has answered as a Landleaguer, but it didn't affect his career. He got stuck in the same place for 30 years. Okay, Doc, that's absolutely excellent. So we can keep that going, and I look forward to seeing a minister on Sutherland soil. Emotional well-being, I think Leslie Ann can't be with us. So Scott, you have a quick report?
Yeah, Leslie Ann's given me an update here. So the emotional well-being group have recently transitioned to Sutherland Cares following the completion of the Sutherland Pathfinder project. A new action plan has been developed, and they're starting to progress through the actions for that. The Sutherland Adaptive and Collaborative Communities team have been working with Here for Caithness to bring together Sutherland-based mental health services in a forum for sharing information and promoting services. The first meeting was held last week and was well attended, with 13 groups sharing updates. Several of the groups are Inverness based, but we're looking for support to deliver services in Sutherland and Caithness. The forum was able to support them with this. The services asked for the forum to be continued, and it will be meeting regularly, led by Here for Caithness. The Sutherland Wellbeing website has been updated to remove the services that were running through COVID. There is also an up-to-date events planner for Sutherland hosted on the website, offering ideas to reduce isolation. We are in discussions with Alice, a local information service for Scotland, about promoting more Sutherland services on their website. That's it, Jim.
Okay, thank you. And I hold up my hand. It's an area which I haven't really got to grips with at the moment, and it's something I should really pay more attention to. So, any questions, any points to raise at this point, at this circumstance, or can we move on? Well, thanks to Leslie Ann for her report. North, onto the forums now. North Forum is Kate can't be here. I think Kate is now based in Invergordon. So, Scott.
Yeah, again, Kate's given us a quick update. I think she is continuing to do her previous role in some aspect until a replacement's identified, but I'll just read out her update as well. The North Forum has held 2 meetings at different times to find what suits people best. The afternoon session was better attended. Local volunteers and community groups came along to share what they were working on developing in their community. We shared funding information, and many of the organisations offered to support each other with projects. We also heard from the local dementia advisor for the North Coast, who was keen to connect with the communities and can deliver sessions like the Memory Cafe in the Strathy Hall, or deliver Dementia Friends sessions to businesses and other organisations. The current chairperson, Kate Kenmure's obviously moved to a new role, so that looking to identify someone new to take that on. And at the last meeting, prior to the next meeting, they were looking to identify a deputy chair for the group. And in the interim, at our pre-meet a fortnight ago, Heather Taylor said that she would help us out with the North Forum for the foreseeable until they identify a replacement as well. And that's it, Jim.
Okay, and thanks to Heather for standing in and taking over. All these groups need to have leadership, someone to actually come here and tell us what's happening. So it's good to see that that has come forward. Anything, anybody want to add anything to the North Forum report? Okay, doke. I think West Forum is Hugh Morrison, and that falls to Phil, I believe, in Hugh's absence.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And also we have a vice chair, which is Marianne. But I'll just give a very quick update of where we got to. We've had 1 meeting. It was well attended. It was mainly community council reps that were invited, but we had representation from, I think, all the communities. The key issues that were very much a kind of exploratory discussion, but the issues won't surprise anybody. They resonate with the ones that have come from elsewhere. Housing, but in particular, what I think was interesting when we talked about housing was these are communities that are already doing projects, and they were talking about the frustrations and some of the barriers that they face, particularly around the bureaucracy of the resumption of croft land and planning, and the requirements of various different public bodies talking to each other and trying to make that process a little bit smoother. There was also discussion about transport, and I think they're very much looking to link in with the work that Councillor Richard Gale is leading and through the partnership. Childcare, again, everybody's talking about childcare. That's a problem across the county, and perhaps one that also affects many communities in the West but doesn't get mentioned so often is connectivity as well, which people in the West find really, really frustrating. I know there are pockets throughout the county. The next meeting is due in the autumn, and I think the idea is that we'll perhaps try and focus on the housing and then try and take a thematic approach after that. But that's the West Forum for you so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Phil. I can totally relate to the frustrations you mentioned. Yeah, it goes beyond frustration. It leads to psychological scarring, in fact, from my own experience. East Forum, Christine, I believe Chris not being present, so are you going to pick it up if you're there? Christine, thank you.
Yeah. So there was an overall discussion that participants hope that our forum would be used for sharing information, including making connections with other projects, funding opportunities, volunteering vacancies, and that there would be a plan drawn up with designated actions for addressing the issues. Employment for young people was a particular area of discussion, especially with the bulk of the area being in the travel to work for the Cromarty Freeport. So we're going to be inviting DYW, Developing the Young Workforce, to our next meeting, and possibly Skills Development Scotland for that. And we've been involved, well, Chris and I have been attending the Careers Fair planning meetings. And probably the last thing to share for everybody here, if they haven't already heard it, is that the David at SSE advises that the Highland Sustainable Development Fund will be opening again in the autumn, and he'll forward more details about that when they become available. And do we know, is Chris going to be carrying on as chair or not yet? Because I'm not going to be in a position to do it. Sorry, that's what I probably should have started with.
Richard, is that one for you?
Yes, so I've spoken to Chris about this. I'm still waiting for a final confirmation, but I'm hoping I've persuaded him that he will continue with the role.
I very much hope he will. Yeah, very much hope he will. Thank you. Christine, should we say your workload won't let you continue as chair? Does that mean you won't lose you entirely? Are you on mute?
Yeah, no, yes, there's a multitude of things, Jim, but I am still going to be here doing some things.
I'm greatly relieved. Central Forum sits with me at the moment, certainly, and just check my mic's on. Attendance is modest. We're heading for our third meeting at the end of this month. It's just the attendance it reminds me of a free church congregation, few but staunch, and they continue to attend. So that's very, very important to me. It's when they start to drift off that I think we need to concern. So hopefully you can bring in more. My report sums up as best as I can just what we've covered so far. And the one thing that I'm looking very carefully at, it hits very much to my own home area too, is the village hall situation and the costs of running these, keeping these community facilities afloat in the face of increasing power bills and vastly increased power bills. So that's something where I think I'm trying to make some ground and get the council to identify where they can perhaps offload assets to a community which actually might generate revenue in the fullness of time. But that's as things are at the moment, and I think we're looking at a situation where the Comedy Firth Freeport must actually be part of the equation in the future, and also the transport, as it keeps coming at me certainly from Edgerton direction, the state of the Struy Road and the High Bridge, built for horses and carts, but now expected to take timber loads, is something that I can't really seem to make any traction on, but I just have to keep plugging away on that one. So the other thing was brought up was the High Trans report on the case for change, and that just seems to be fundamentally an Inverness cycle to work document. And again, at 194 pages, I haven't had the tenacity to work my way through to the end of it. I just wish they do brief executive summaries for people who are perhaps challenged in terms of retention and memory. Anything I can add to what was a very brief report? Okie doke. Right. We move on to network group updates. Angela, resilience, and I keep trying. Resilience meetings seem to conflict with other bits of my diary, so I keep apologising for not being able to attend. But please bring us up to date.
I will do. Not to worry, Jim. We'll perhaps we need to change the date of the next meeting. So in conjunction, we'll talk to you to see if we can find a date that's suitable for you and everybody else. So very brief update in the notes, not a huge amount to add to that. Continues to be a useful meeting, network, peer-to-peer support, and conscious that quite a lot of conversations go on as a result of that out with the meeting, which is good. So we've met 3 times since the last full SCP meeting, full partnership meeting, one of which was a face-to-face meeting and visit to the Carla Southern Developments Trust, Community Cafe and Larder. So that was very successful. Everybody enjoyed it. I'm sure we'll do some other visits, but thanks again to David and colleagues for hosting and organising that. Number of strategic issues, challenges keep popping up, which we've spoken about already this morning, all the ones you might expect. And probably as a result of that, I think there's a sort of increasing call for or questions around Sutherland plans, place plans. What are they? How do they fit together? And how can we find out more? So our next meeting, if not the one after, we hope to focus on place plans by inviting somebody from the Highland Council who are leading on those, just to give us a little bit more information, a bit more context about how the whole lot knits together. So that's the future plan. And our next meeting, as I say, was scheduled for the 20th of June, but that clashes with something Queen and I have got, so we do need to change that. So that'll be advised soon.
Thank you,
That's all
Angela.
from me. Thank you.
I'd only point out that you're managing very, very well without me. So I'm sure it's just for my own interest that I would attend. As it regards place plans, these seem to be the flavour of the time, having taken over from locality plans, which seems to have just be gathering dust in corners now. So we'll just see where this goes, and anything you can find out, I'm very grateful. I work in the point of view that if they don't know what it is, then put something together and ask them if that's what suits. So that's what I'm doing in this corner at the moment when I get time. Okay, look, anything for Angela and resilience? Okay, well, thank you very much for attending. SACC, David, is an update. I think we're good to hear what's happening.
Well, the biggest news you've already announced is that we're back up to full complement of staff with Scott joining us, which is fantastic. I don't think we've ever had anybody join us who understands the SCP as thoroughly as Scott does, because it's a pretty dark art, but because of Scott's involvement over the last year, he's been able to hit the ground running, and he started with us this week, and that's been fantastic. Fiona's been doing a power of work. I'd like to really thank Fiona for ploughing away on her own for the last wee while since Natalie left, and doing a brilliant job. So it's good that actually she's away today to see her daughter get prizes at school, so that's good for her as well. So Scott's really interested in a few bits and pieces that we've really spoken about today that are important, and Scott's going to lead on working with Richard on the transport stuff. We are really keen to do a little bit more for one of the protected characteristics that we haven't specifically targeted, which is disabilities. So we're going to be speaking to the Access Forum to see how we can make sure that we embed that. Statistically across the UK, I think 10% of people fall into the category of disabilities. I would say, given the profiles that we saw earlier, we probably have a higher percentage in that. So you're talking about 1,500 people probably that is part of our community that we need to be able to find ways to show that we are supporting and helping them. So that's another aspect. And the one that you just mentioned there, Gemma, something Scott's really interested in, is investigating place planning, and given the kind of ambiguity at the moment, how we can make place planning work for us. And I think we've got an opportunity at the moment to kind of lead on this and find a way that place planning can feed into everything that we've been speaking about previously. So that's really good. From the communications perspective, we're developing a quarterly newsletter to go to all community councils. Some of the work I've been doing across Scotland with community planning has made me realise that the linkage between community councils and community planning is weak right across Scotland. For whatever reason, it is not. Now, I think we do better, but I think it still could be better. So we're going to really try and engage better with the community councils to make sure that they can see the value in attending meetings and feeding in, because they're really valuable contributors to us understanding what's going on in communities. Our Facebook reach at the moment is about 6,000 people, which is really, really good. Some of the other statistics were a bit strange, a 19.2% increase this week compared to last week, but then it'll be down 25 next week, so it's that's hard to gauge. The other thing that has just been mentioned there is developing young workforce, and we're going to be able to help the Caithness Chamber of Commerce, who have the contract for delivering it with the Sutherland schools for the next couple of months. They were struggling with staffing, and Fiona's going to be helping them to deliver. And again, it fits into what we're talking about with employability, careers, and all that kind of stuff. So, so that's, I think, all the update. Is there anything else, Scott, that I've missed?
No, I don't think so. That was the main points.
Yeah. So yeah, the team now is Fiona full-time, Scott's part-time, and Kelly's doing some of the back office stuff, claims, a lot of the kind of online stuff and all that kind of stuff. So Scott and Fiona are the team. So we got a team of McDonald's, the Big Macs.
I totally endorse what you say about Fiona. She just controls my diaries so very, very well. So keeps making sure I kind of know.
That's not what she's paid to do, though, Jim. That's not what she's meant to be doing.
It's the bit I appreciate. Okay, Doc. And I can't imagine where we'd be without KOSDT as our fundament, as our foundation for all the work that we do. So it's fantastic that you're there. Anything for David or Scott? Okay, doke. Moving on is Northwest 2045 Phil, but also if Boyd's still here, it'd be good to hear from Boyd too. I get just an update on the depopulation thing. So Phil, please carry on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, Boyd is here. So
oh yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was quiet in the background.
Well, I'm just going to quickly cover 3 main points, but I'll let Boyd deal with the repopulation one. So Boyd, if you forgive me, I'll just do the other 2 quickly first. There are 2 other main things that we're working on at the moment. One is the future structure of Northwest 2045. It's a familiar dilemma that we've had in the Sutherland Community Partnership over the years, and one that I think we will probably face again. Do we set up an organisation that does stuff, or do we just remain a partnership, a coalition, and with partners, individual partners leading projects? And I think that we are considering how that's going to go forward, and in the meantime going to perhaps put an application into the latest round of CRF funding, which has just been announced by the council. And what I'll do is I'll just put a link in the chat if anybody wants to apply to that. It's focused on capacity building, volunteers, kind of and raising awareness of existing initiatives to support groups or individuals. So it's not about building stuff, it's about capacity building, and it's, you know, it's very much aimed at projects that will keep other stuff going. It's that kind of background work, and I know that that's something that many people at the resilience group, for example, have said, you know, we need that kind of support. So I would really recommend everyone puts in an expression of interest. There's £1 million, came from the Scottish government, but the turnaround is really quick. Don't shoot me, I'm the messenger. Got to get your application, your expression of interest in by Friday, a week today, I think it is. But it's an expression of interest that's 2 sides. Right, so forgive me, that wasn't really about Northwest 2045, that was an aside, but an important one, I hope you'll agree. Boyd's going to talk about repopulation, work that he does actually for Highland Council, but it's tied in with Northwest 2045 because of the geography. The other one is the RLUP. So this is a Scottish Government initiative that is meant to try and bring landowners and the ones that control land closer to the communities that live in them and giving communities a voice over them. We're not really sure where the kind of politics on this is going, but they have agreed to fund it for a further year. So it gives us the opportunity, if nothing else, to come up with a framework, which is the objective, that will work for Northwest Sutherland, while keeping our fingers firmly crossed that this is mainstreamed by government as a policy that enables communities to influence the land in which they live, over which they don't always have control. So that funding is confirmed for the current year. There's a focus on, they've done some work on natural capital, and they are trying to see if they can build on the back of that a kind of carbon credit that might effectively create some kind of almost like community benefit, but from either protecting or rehabilitating the natural capital within the Northwest Sutherland. The challenge is that actually a lot of Northwest Sutherland hasn't been, is quite pristine or is in quite good nick, and so it's difficult to get money for restoring something that you've looked after in the first place. So there's that kind of dilemma that goes on in the background that particularly applies to the peatland and ties in with all that stuff that's going on around the World Heritage Site. But anyway, they're going to have a bash at it, and they're going to put an application into the Ferns, which is some NatureScot funding, to see if they can develop a local carbon credit and a company to manage it, and see whether they can squeeze a little bit of community benefit out of that. Very much at the beginning, I don't really understand it fully, if I'm honest, and I think we'll just see how that pans out. But there may be interest for other people in the partnership as well on that. And then the Land Plus project, this is based really around KLB. It's meant to be about seeing in an individual community how the community can be more greatly involved in accessing the land for important projects within that community, particularly housing. But actually, it's turning into, as inevitably it will do, a much wider conversation about childcare and depopulation and so on and so forth. So interesting work going on, being led by the very capable Rachel Skeen, that I know many of you on the call will know. And lastly, I think I need to apologise. I don't think we managed to invite the Northwest 2045 people to this meeting, an oversight on collectively our part, but mainly mine. And I'll try and rectify that in the future to make sure they're here, because actually there will be questions that people might want to ask, and I don't have the answers. So Boyd, I'll let you lead on the repopulation stuff.
Right, thank you very much, Bill. Basically, my role has been working with communities to identify areas of land that could be used for housing, working with communities from Quirk all the way around to Betty Hill. Obviously, some of those communities have ongoing projects like, for example, Quirk and Scowry and Ascent. But from an original about 19 hectares of land that were identified by communities, we've narrowed it down to about 6 hectares of land over about 5 communities, different sites, looking at in terms of taking forward housing projects.
Okay. Are you still going wide? Floor still yours.
It's also mine. So that's basically been the key of my work. And obviously one of the issues that's coming up at the moment is childcare and school care, and that's not been a focus of my work. If going forward, that would be, I guess, something that my line manager might be to look at. It's not been an issue I've been looking at. And I'm still waiting to see if I'm going to be, my 1-year contract will be extended after this month. So I'll see what's happening. So that's about what I've done in full in the last year.
Good, excellent. And it's good to see some hectares that will actually be identified to come forward for housing. I had no idea the contract was coming to an end. What buttons do we press to keep this going?
I believe the Scottish Government have made commitments to keep it going. Certainly the Highland Council have committed to pay for half of the funding for that. But I think it's an issue about funding for the whole of Scotland, really.
Yes, aye. So I'll take that on board. David?
Just a really interesting comment there that Boyd made, that he's been employed and doing a great job as a repopulation officer, but childcare isn't under his remit. And I think that's why we have to think holistically about everything that is necessary to allow people to live and work in our area, because sometimes repopulation is purely aimed at building houses. And sometimes those houses disappear into be holiday homes within 5 years. So it's not just about building houses, it's thinking holistically about how do we allow people of working age to live and work in our area. So it'd be really interesting. Hopefully we will get an extension to Boyd's funding, because he's doing a great job, and hopefully get a wider remit for him to include all the things that he's unpicking as he's going along as well. But it's the work that's been done there is first class.
Okay, noted. What I'll do is I'll take it as an action myself to ask Kate, Chief Exec, just how things stand, and to actually see if we can to get this consolidated and sorted. A number of
Thank
people
you.
have to leave, so I quite understand that. So we'll catch up with everybody in due course. So if you're having to leave, that's just the way the world works. So good stuff. CRF though seems to be more of a revenue fund than a capital fund in our case, in part at least.
Well, Jim, there are different strands, and this is the first one. So this is the CLLD, which is Scottish Government funding, needs to be spent by next April. So they're really keen to get that out the door. The other stuff, the Highland Coastal Communities Fund and whatever the other one's called, PBI is it, I think, which is the capital one, they will be announced in due course because there's more flexibility over the timings. But this CLLD has to be funded by, has to be spent by April. And what they've been trying to do in the team, and I think wisely, is just badge it as CRF, just to try and keep things simple. Otherwise, we end up drowning in a sea of acronyms. But it does mean that there are slightly subtle differences between different rounds of CRF, and this is a particularly revenue, community capacity building kind of strand. There'll be capital and more project-related ones that will follow later in the summer. I've put the link in the chat. I hope that explanation helps.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Just refreshes my memory as well. As regards childcare, this came up on item 7A of the recent resources meeting, specifically for the cuts the council have made in support of a non-statutory obligation that they have. And I think I made the point, and the chief executive took it on, that they should be pushing the First Minister to follow up on his first 4 million that he identified for childcare, and to which disappear very quickly into very favoured projects, and to actually cast the net a lot wider. But with a budget shortfall of a billion or so in the next financial year for the government, then I may not hold my breath, but I've done the best I can to actually see if we can get the council to pursue Scottish Government to find the funding for an expanding element of childcare in our communities. Any questions for Phil or for Boyd? Okay, moving quickly on as people are disappearing. Community Matters and AOCB. Anybody wish to come in? David?
A couple of things. You might have seen in the paper the day that we finally got designated the Sutherland Caithness part of the Far North Line as the 9th community rail partnership in Scotland. It's been in abeyance for about a year. The application's sitting for about a year, but we'll get that back up and running. We're speaking to a web developer next week to try and get a website up and running and then be back engaging with the communities. But that, bless you, Angela, that could have a real opportunity to help the communities across Sutherland, and there's lots of interesting ideas. So that could be really helpful. Phil mentioned the Nature Scot Ferns application, which is the Facility for Investment Ready Nature in Scotland, which is about carbon trading. We're also working in partnership with the Kyla Sutherland Fisheries Trust and their Riverwoods project, and potentially through the tree planting that they need to do along the riverbanks to keep the temperatures down, using the carbon money that's coming in, some of that for community benefit funding for other environmental projects and all that. So that's quite an interesting project. Really complex. I can't get my tiny mind around it, but it seems to be there's a bit of momentum there, and I think the community benefit aspect of it really sets you apart. I think carbon trading is a pretty established thing. The other thing, just to mention briefly, is that we've been lucky enough, Marina Grant, I always have to think because she was Marina Ross when she was in school with me, but Marina Grant from Highland Council Housing put the Highland Council Housing team and ourselves, Kyla Sutherland Development Trust, together for a partnership award at the THC Staff Recognition Awards, which are happening at 12:30, so I've got to go away and make myself beautiful. And we're in the partnership award there for working together to help some of the council housing residents through our Helping Hands and Cash for Kids project, and through the recommendations from Marina and her team, there's 106 children and £16,000 worth of support being given to council house residents or council residents, and so we got an award. We've got a nice lunch. We're up against the refugee project, so we don't have much hope of winning, but we'll get a nice lunch out of it anyway. But it's nice to get some recognition for partnership work, and at the end of the day, this is what we're all about at the SCP, is partnership working. So we're really appreciative that Marina thought of us when we did that. So that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, the recognition is well deserved. If I just pick up a quick point before I move on to Marianne. Edgerton, as you well know, are very keen to have a request stop in the Far North Line, so I think they'll be banging on your door in due course to actually have been pursuing it for a year and more, and I think this is the first chance they have for seeing progress. Well, Gordon, our treasurer's from Edgerton, and he's come on board, if you pardon the pun, specifically for that reason, to try and get Edgerton on there. And because it's basically the Far North Line, I would say north, but it's actually west to Tain that's coming on. At the moment, our guy is the first station, but Edgerton would fit under that, and the other stations that are more commuter type stations aren't going to be part of it. So we won't extend any further into East or Ross, but because Edgerton falls under Sutherland in this context as well, that works. So yeah, we're on that. That would be good. I got a bit of a mauling on Wednesday night at the Community Council meeting for other things. It's nice to have a wee win coming forward now and again. Yeah, Marianne, sorry to keep you waiting.
It's just for the sake of clarity on, I suspect that some of the childcare issues brought to Boyd are not to do with the non-statutory childcare, but also the early learning and childcare situation on the North and West, because there's been a closure of Melvick Nursery and Kinlochbervie, with the children, you know, given the option to go elsewhere for non-funded places. But the fact remains that there will be funded 3-year-olds within the course of the year. And certainly what Melvick would like to do is, and I've requested this already, is that there will be a review before the end of the year for the Melvick situation, so that it's not a whole session closure, so that we can push for a review before the end of this calendar year and hopefully have that nursery up and running for January, when there is a fundable 3-year-old ready to go. Because we're told that it's, you know, children can travel a reasonable distance. There's no definition of the reasonable distance. And when you live in Melvick, travelling along that north coast in the winter with a 2-3-year-old, and not everybody who has a 3-year-old can stop their job, and also the fact that they're taking other children to the primary school to travel along the north coast to another nursery. So it's not just the non-statutory things that are throwing up problems here, and we're having to battle for in all directions.
Yes, indeed. Anything I can help with, please just ask, because ELC is very important. David?
Again, it's on childminding, and you know, we put out a post yesterday. The Scottish Childminding Association are putting out a big call to help and train up childminders across Sutherland, and Sutherland specifically being targeted as one of the areas that the Childminding Association wishes to train people up. One of the issues that face childminders was that once they go beyond a certain amount of children, they have to invest quite an amount into their house to make them safe for whatever the required is, whether it's 8 or 10. I can't remember what it is. It might be as low as 6. I've always thought, and Jim, your comment earlier about halls, why don't we invest grants into our halls, make them the places that where the childminding can happen? It takes away the expense from the childminders, and it makes the halls hubs again, and it might make them you know, some income from that, and maybe investing to make our community halls childminding friendly, so that local childminders can use the hall rather than invest in their homes, might be a really good solution. And then keeping it local, just something that I've always thought might be worth investigating.
I think that's something we bear in mind. I can see that working. I've been contacted recently by somebody in this area looking to set up an external outdoor childminding things. I've directed them towards the Camore Wood, but they need a building, a structure to actually make that work. And of course, overall, over the whole thing hangs the dark shadow of the Care Commission and the regulations that they impose. but probably quite rightly. But it's just an extra burden that a bureaucracy that we face everywhere we look, in fact. Okay. Any other points under AOCB? For a long meeting, a very profitable and purposeful meeting, but anything else that we need to address at this point, or can we release people into the sunshine? Okay, seems to, okay, Scott, sorry.
No, just a quick one, Jim. Just obviously Richard Ross is currently taken over from my previous role. So he's interim in the role and will be taking forward the chair. I believe the job's going to interview on the 20th of June, so we'll know after that date who'll be doing it longer term.
Okay, thanks for the update, Scott. So we'll just hopefully we'll have somebody in place, and I wish Richard well. Let us just hope we see him continuously here for some time to come. Is that Scott? That seems to be a residue hand. So in which case, if there's nothing else, but a reminder that the date of the next meeting is the 1st of September 2023, followed by the 1st of December, but we'll have pre-meets organised before that, just to thresh out things as they go. Angela, sorry.
Very quickly on those dates, Jim, I understand that they clash, or they are the same dates as CaseNet Community Partnership, and I know some partners do attend both, so we just might like to just double check that and make sure they...
If we leave that with Fiona and Scott to sort out and publish and circulate revised dates, then thank you for pointing that out. Okay. David?
Just one thing that we haven't mentioned today is obviously that one of our previous attendees and one of Angela's previous colleagues and my previous colleagues, Gail, has now got another job, which is the manager of community planning for Highland Council, to look at developing community planning right across the council area. And I believe we're having some meetings with her next week to see how that might work. And I think that's a fantastic result for us, because she has been at the coalface here and understands how community planning can work when it works well. So I think that that's a good perspective for her to be looking at community planning right across the patch. So that would be really good to keep Gail involved, because obviously she's a very valued person in this forum.
Yeah, I'm well aware. I've already told her that she shall not escape me, that I know where she is. She's only an email away. Okay, in which case, thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance this morning. It's been, I think, very, very purposeful and very helpful, and the contributions are greatly valued, and I've got one or two actions to take away. So if that's everything, all business, then thank you very much, and we'll close things down and enjoy the weekend.
Cheers, folks.
Thank you, Jim. Well cheered.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Compliments always welcome.
Thanks, bye.